Hello and welcome to this video for today. Whether you're here for the first time or you're returning, hope you will enjoy. Hey guys, how's it going? Hope it's going well. Today in this video, in case you haven't seen the icon image yet or the thumbnail, we are having a bit of a discussion about the part of the color pie that contains white, essentially. So I want to have this honest and frank discussion with you guys about white. And you guys can tell me what you guys think as well if you wish to at the end, when I just want to present my thoughts on white. And I don't think white is nearly as bad in some cases. In some cases, I will stress that some people think it is. Yes, it has some glaring weaknesses, but those weaknesses aren't the weaknesses that I think most people identify with in Commander. You know, like everyone identifies that white needs ramp. I actually don't think that white needs ramp at all. Like, it has some ramp, and I don't really think it needs any ramp, really. It doesn't need any ramp. It has enough ramp, realistically. Yes, sure, could its ramp be better? Yes, sure, but it doesn't actually need ramp to function in its current state. That is my perspective. The other thing that people say is that white doesn't draw cards, and yes, I agree to that specifics, that white doesn't draw cards, and it should be able to accumulate a card advantage system. That's what I'm going to say about that. And that's a very specific sort of term that I'm going with, a card advantage system. And this is the other thing that I think that white actually needs, is it doesn't really need quote unquote card advantage, or card draw more specifically, but it actually just needs some kind of synergy that it can actually work with. Like, there is no really supported archetypes in white except for, equipment and auras, really, and even those are very low, on the level at which they are supported in the color white. So that is what I think, mainly is white's issue. You can look at any of the legendaries that are in white and just see that this is the case. Shram is one of the highest, made commander decks in white. Why? Because it actually has some amount of synergy and has some, variant of card advantage, built into it. Yes, it works with, vehicles and auras and equipment and whatnot, but for the most part, it is a either aura or equipment deck, and it is mostly a Voltron deck because of that. I've seen a couple of vehicle decks, but that's not really that big of a thing, and there's not nearly enough vehicles. You look at any of the other commanders that are in white, there are a few other ones that are in white, but what specific, very specific synergies do they actually offer you and say, this is a direction in which you can build around? Like, there's some angels, like there's the angel Lyra, Dawnbringer, or whatever, that, pumps up your angels, gives them lifelink and whatnot. Yeah, sure, you could build an angel deck, but what more, I guess, could you build in that angel deck? If you're going angels, you're going creatures. If you're going into creatures, then where's the support for, the card advantage engines and whatnot? There are a couple colorless ones, yeah, sure, again, but there's not nearly enough to put into a deck that would actually benefit you for being, angel tribal. And again, there's not enough other synergies. Like, sure, you have one angel that supports your other angels, but there's not enough other angels that really care about all your other angels and whatnot. There's not many other Lord effects or whatnot. There's no other real effects like that. That's the only real one. That's what I mean. If you look at all these other legendaries, or you look at the cards that are in white, yeah, sure, they have really good removal, but you could argue that a lot of the other colors have fairly decent removal nowadays as well. Like, they keep breaking the color pie with some of their removal options. And yeah, sure, some colors, I will say, need certain types of removal. I think that green absolutely should be able to destroy artifacts and enchantments. That's fine. I think Beast Within is actually a decent card, but I do think that it is a color pie break. But again, it's already been printed. Generous Gift is a very good card, but again, that just falls into White's wheelhouse, and it is just the color shifted Beast Within to, in a sense. So it really should have been White to begin with. But anyway, but again, you look at anything that's in black, like black has essentially a Swords to Plowshares now. Not literally, but again, it has a 2-mana, exile a creature and somebody gets to draw a land, or draw a card rather. So that's a very decent effect in that color, where it hasn't had one really before. Blue has, Pongify, and Reality Shift and a couple other ones. So those are also really good options. Green doesn't have one. Red really doesn't have one. You could kind of count, Blasphemous Act, kind of, but it's more of a board wipe. Because you have to have like 10 things or whatever on the battlefield for it to cost 1. So, yeah. But anyway, still, those other colors have those things. And even blue recently got the one that exiles a creature or artifact. It makes it a 4/4, and that's not nearly as good as making something a 3/3 or something. Green has things to make things into like lands or whatever. Blue has the one to make things into a land as well, I believe, Imprisoned in the Moon. So yeah, some of those effects aren't just, cultivated into white. So that's what I mean. Like, the other colors do have decent spot removal, and, there is decent board wipes in the other colors. It's not like it's, those other colors do need those effects too. White is definitely the best at those effects, but again, when it's like, well, when I'm building a deck, how many board wipes do I need? Maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 at the most, depends. But which ones am I going to choose? I'm going to choose the ones that are most efficient, which means I would take Blasphemous Act into my consideration because it's usually just 1 mana. And then I would take things that either don't affect me or I can take a larger advantage of, like Tragic Arrogance is a really good one. Or what's the other one? Winds of Abandon. Winds of Abandon is actually really good. If you're like a Voltron deck, Slash the Ranks can be really good. Or what's the Single Combat can be really good as well. That one's pretty good. So there are a few that, depends on what your strategy is. But again, for the most part, you'll only pick 1 or 2, the best 1 or 2 that are, specific to what you're doing, and whatnot. So again, like, having these other colors mostly have decent wraths for the most part. Again, blue has Cyclonic Rift, black has Toxic Deluge, it has a whole bunch of other ones, not nearly as good, but they still have them. So you're not picking, again, if you're picking white for a part of your color pie in your deck, like, what are you picking it for? Like, that's the point. Like, if you're playing mono white, then it's a bit different. But again, if you're picking white as part of your deck color, it's either because you like white, or it is a pretty decent color as a support color, and that's what I mean. But that's all it is. Like, in the other decks, it's like, oh yeah, it's my support color. It's the color that I use because I don't have good removal in my colors, or I don't have enough good, removal in my color. So I'm using that for that purposes, and maybe a couple other things, to tutor an enchantment or to tutor an artifact or whatnot, because white does have some of those tutors, and I need some of those artifacts or need some of those enchantments. Whatnot, depends. But again, beyond those like few cards that you can point at and say this is a good card, yes, like the white tutors are pretty good, but what and there's a few really good artifacts that they could get, but those artifacts could be in any color. So I'm not ever going to talk about cards that could be in any color, because they're not white. Colorless is not white. Just because it's colorless, it doesn't matter to me. It matters to me what white actually has. And yes, again, they have been giving white some things in the past couple of years, but they've really been giving white sticks and stones in comparison to what they're giving every other color. I don't know why it is that Wizards has this attitude, or has this mindset, or has this philosophy about it, that white cannot be as powerful as the other colors. It cannot even be apparently as powerful as red, which to me just baffles my mind. White is meant to, be law and order to red. The problem that, again, a lot of people will bring up is that white is good at stacks, white is good at land destruction, white is good at these things that other people find unfun. Yeah, that's true, but even saying that it is good at stacks or tax or whatever effects, or mass land destruction or whatever, how do you, as the white player, actually take advantage of mass land destruction? Like, I don't see how mass land destruction actually helps you. Yeah, it sets your opponents back, but it also probably sets you back. Yeah, there's a couple things that are in white that, again, help you keep your lands through mass land destruction, and there are a couple tutors that can get them, but again, there's not enough really to make a deck around. There's not enough synergy to make a deck around. Same with stacks. Even though there is quite a few cards to make a deck around that, there's no real payoffs. Like, what is your payoff? Your payoff is to sit there and hope that your opponents mill out, or whatever, or just concede out of boredom or out of frustration that they can't play the game. That's your payoff. That's the problem with white. There is no, here's how I'm actually going to advance what I'm actually building on and actually affect, what I'm doing in my deck and in my own synergies to actually progress and win the game. That's White's real problem, is that they just don't put out enough cards for it in the synergies, or give it some synergies to actually say, okay, what we'll do is we'll let white do this, and we'll give it synergies in this, and let it have synergies in this or that or whatever. They haven't done that a lot, and they're starting to do it again, but they're still doing it at very baby step paces, while they're just throwing green and blue and hit red and black everything. In the last couple of years, there has been so many really, really powerful green, blue, red, and black cards, and yet, all the white cards are still. I still feel like a lot of the white cards are having a design philosophy that was, working like maybe 5 years ago or something. Like they're just 5 or so years behind all the other colors in terms of the philosophy that they're actually putting into the cards. They're not giving them actual things to go, okay, what can I actually build around? What can I actually do to advance a plan and, get ahead, do what my deck is doing, win the game somehow, or have a chance to win the game. That is the main problem that this color has. And I'm not saying that you can't win games. It is always possible to win games, but for the most part, since there's not much synergy there for many decks, it's just, I hope that I plop down enough creatures or enough artifacts to buff those creatures, or enough enchantments to buff those creatures, that eventually my combat damage plan will get there. That's the only other thing that you can do, and there's not even enough stuff to say your creatures get, flying when they're attacking, or they get some evasion, or you can draw cards when you deal combat damage, or just something, or you can, put cards into your graveyard, and if you attacked with a creature this turn, you can return a card from your graveyard to your hand, or whatever. Little things like that. Like, there was that card that, at the end step or whatever, you get a CMC 1 or whatever thing back, or whatever it is, I can't remember. But again, little things like that, whereas, even red, again, just has got so many, really great things, is just, again, sticks and stones, even like red, which was one of the worst colors a few years ago, along with white, they really gave it a lot of stuff to go, okay, what do we want to do with red? How can we make red better? Okay, let's give it exile-based or impulse-based draw, essentially. And that worked really well. They did a lot of work for it, and they gave them a lot of key pieces to, work with that thing. And then they gave it a whole bunch of cards that pay off exile-based, draw and or, being able to play things from exile. Like, they've given them even more things with red, just recently, even though some of them are red-black and whatnot, things like that. But there still are a few red ones and a few black ones that sort of do this as well. But again, they've given them even more stuff in that archetype and in that zone to go, okay, here's how I get card advantage. They haven't done that with white. They haven't given it any synergies really to work off of. Again, so that's really what, again, white's problem is. It's not that white can't ramp, because outside of, if you have a really big budget, most of the other colors, bar green, can't ramp except for having artifacts. So, or, the mana rocks, essentially, signets and whatnot, these sorts of things, or just generic mana rocks. So that's not a real thing. Unless, again, Cabal coffers cost a lot of money. So unless you've got the budget for it, all the Black Banner doublers, they all cost a fair amount of money because they're really good. So unless you've got a really good budget, again, every color is limited to just pretty much having mana rocks. So there's not that much ramp out there outside of that. And then when you get into, other things, like, again, I sort of talked about single target removal, wraths, all the colors have something, for the most part, to deal with, and something that is within their color pie, for the most part, even though they break the color pie. which is weird. But again, they still have something to remove stuff. So you could say that they're all even in terms of that. Yes, white has a lot more, but that doesn't really matter in this case because, again, so what? I'm still going to pick the best one or two, maybe three of those, and then whatever. I don't care about the rest. So, but after that, again, you go into saying, right, well, what are the next best things besides ramp, removal and board wipes and single target removal? Well, it's card draw and or synergies in which to progress the game and whatnot. So that is the real problem. Like, it's not like there isn't some cards that are Simic, not Simic, Boros, let's say, or whatever, or Selesnya, or whatever. I was trying to think of all the colours, but I know they've changed some of the names and whatnot. I keep forgetting that. But again, like, when you look at like some of these 2 colours or 3 colours, it's not like the cards that have white in them are inherently weaker because they have white or whatever. It's not. But some of the Boros commanders from the past certainly aren't, the greatest, or whatnot. And some of the Boros cards certainly aren't the greatest. I still find that Boros is as well like the weakest color pair and is the most least represented. People build it because people go, well, I want the ultimate deck building challenges. And the same for white. People go, well, maybe want to build a white deck because it seems like the hardest thing to do. How do I actually have a deck that actually works somehow in this color that doesn't really have very much to work with? So, again, guys, I don't want to go over and over this, but this is what I find is White's main problem in Commander. So, you can let me know what you guys think about it. What do you think White's main problem is? And, like, how can they make White, more viable? I just think White actually needs some effective synergies. And no, again, I'm going to say this as a final sort of caveat, life gain is not that. Like, if they build more things around getting tokens off of life gain, or getting counters off of life gain, or whatever, something else, getting some sort of payoff that isn't just, at the beginning of your upkeep, win the game, or whatever, then yes, then it is a good payoff. Just having 4 million life isn't going to win you the game. It might slow other people down to a degree from killing you, but Voltron and Commander damage is still a thing. So, again, I don't really consider that life gain, unless you're actually building something with it, building counters on your creatures, building, tokens, whatever, whatever you're doing with them, some other synergies, or using your life to, to pay for different effects like what black does and whatnot. So, yeah. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Tell me down there in the comments below. If you would like to further support the channel, you can go onto our Patreon. You can also get social with us on our Facebook. To follow all the updates, make sure you hit the like button. And on our Discord, to get into it, please leave a comment and I'll send you an invite. All links are in the description. I hope you have enjoyed this video here today. And if you have, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. And I hope you will come back for another one. See you then.